Thank you, Zoom Siri. Hey guys, what's happening? It's so lovely to not see most of you. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Tama. Come on, I know you have cameras. Turn them on. Or else I get to stare at a dark blank wall. There we go. Thank you so much. So what's going on? Happy end of May. I can't believe it's been a month since we've been in this mastermind. Holy Christmas. So I want you to start, remember this is your time, right? So you have another 58.5 minutes or so for any questions that you have, any conversations that you want to be certain that we have, any struggles you're having, any challenges, any opportunities or successes that you want to share. And to kind of kick us off, I wanted to just throw out a conversation that has been on my mind for the last week plus or so, so that we have either a place to start or at least a place to get back to if you have other thoughts. So as you're gathering those, Jason Abrams, who is our VP of Industry, and many of you have seen speak, Jason Abrams said something on a call I was on with him last week that I just kind of can't get out of my head. And he said to us, do your competitors feel as much pressure from you as you feel like you feel from them? I thought, that's a really good question. Do your competitors feel as much pressure from you as you feel that you feel from them? And so I pushed that back out to you guys today to ask the same and similar questions, right? So the same question is, do your competitors in your listings and sales business, do your competitors feel the same pressure that you feel that you may feel from them? And then how do you move that from that broader question to more specifics when it relates to pressure, right? What pressure do you feel, and what pressure are you exerting on or from your database, on or from your ability to list at a high level, on or from the market, right? Do you know who your competitors are? Do you feel like everyone's your competition, or do you feel like only certain people are your competition? Do you have an opportunity to walk into a listing scenario and exert pressure from the perspective of anybody else who might be going in for that same listing? Once they know it's you, they know they're in trouble. Or is it only you feeling that way about the competition? I don't know. They're interesting questions. I posed them to you because I heard Jason say that last Monday, and I just haven't been able to get it out of my head. From every different angle, I look at it from the market center angle. I look at it from the listing and sales angle. I look at it from an investment property perspective. Like what are those pressures, and how are we? What activities are we focused on to exert pressure such that we get the results we're looking for? It's kind of like, do we show up every day feeling like the world happens to us, or do we show up every day knowing that we happen to the world, and that we get to make some decisions about how our day, how our week, how our month, how our year, how our business, how our life actually goes? Or is everything kind of reactive? So there's so many different variables and versions of that question. But since it's been banging around in my brain, I figured, well, I might as well torture other people with it as well. So now you have it as well. So again, we can kind of start there, or if you have thoughts about other topics that are more relevant and specific to you and your business, I'm happy to move there, as long as we can circle back maybe to the pressure conversation in the end. Alice, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. relating to that pressure question, I was recently on a listing appointment, and the people who own the house are neighbors of my son's. So I felt the pressure to, not to impress them, but to come across to them as being as knowledgeable as my son told them I was.
Living up to your hype.
Yes, exactly. And also to know that they were interviewing a couple of other agents. In the end, I did get the listing. And one of the other agents who was, had made a pitch, she's pretty well known in the Stamford area, especially in the Hubbard Heights, Westover area. So now the pressure I've put on myself, whether rightly or wrongly, but in keeping with this comment, is she watching to see what's happening with the listing that she didn't get that I did, and thinking, oh, maybe I could have done a better job. And I'm thinking, am I doing a good enough job? So I can see where that totally comes into play, totally, whether you wanted to or not. I think it's just part of human nature.
Indeed. And I appreciate that story because it kind of illustrates the underlying foundational point that I think I was looking to make, and that pressure is not necessarily good or bad. It's not positive or negative. It just is. You get to determine how you use it, right? In Alice's scenario, in her head, she's wondering, well, have I now put pressure on one of my competitors to wonder what she didn't do to win, right? Am I putting pressure, or how do I work with the pressure that I'm now putting on myself, right? When you put pressure on yourself, it just pushes you to be better. Right, so that's actually a positive thing. So there's no right or wrong answer to any of this, and yet the idea of how we're exerting pressure and the activities that we're focused on to exert such pressure are just they're it's kind of a fascinating arena to kind of spend some time in. What else? Anything else to that point of pressure? Anything that you feel like you're doing specifically to exert pressure on the market, to exert pressure on your database, to exert pressure on your competitors? What is it you're doing? How are you showing up? You do remember the rules and the point of a mastermind, right? should we review quickly, right? And so let me ask this question. There's a one of the things that this points to, right? Any successful business looks at the pressure that either market share or no market share exerts on its ability to continue to grow and achieve, right? And so one of my questions, I asked this yesterday too, and I was kind of surprised how few people had an answer to it. And so I'll ask you guys as well. In the area, in the town or city that you choose to be your primary territory, what is your personal market share? Do you know it? Have you calculated it? It doesn't matter if it's high or low. That's not the point, right? Because if it's a decimal, and if it's a decimal that's really long, you still then know where you're starting. And so what would you need to do? What activities would you have to take to double your market share, right? If you had 0.25% market share in, I don't know, pick a town, Wilton, what activities would you have to take to move things in a direction where you could finish the year with minimally 0.5%? So you've doubled your market share, and then double it from there. Now you're up to a full 1% or whatever. You see my point, right? It's not about the number. It's about knowing where you are, knowing where you want to go, and exerting the pressure in the necessary spot on activities to help you get there. Ms. Tamamercy, how are you?
I'm good. How is everyone else? Rick, I've been pondering this question since you brought it up, and I feel like I'm feeling a different pressure than what I think you're describing. I'm feeling pressure to stay positive. I'm feeling pressure to keep my clients staying positive more than I'm feeling pressure from another agent.
Well, so there's lots of different pressures, right? And so the pressure that may be pushing most at you right now is that pressure of positivity, right? But the whole conversation around pressure is around, it really revolves around growth, right? And so what Tam is talking about is presently in the business arena, there's pressures to keep everybody kind of pushing forward. That's not the same as a pressure about pressures that are related to the on the business side, right? There's kind of two different buckets of that. And it is a challenge to keep everybody facing forward, right? So what activities are you focused on to make sure that everybody stays positive and writing business? Or what could we be doing if we're not doing it?
I love the Monday mindset with Jen. It sets up the whole week. And I think any tool like that is really, really helpful.
Yeah, you have to use strategies to keep your own head like on correctly. Right. And here's a reality, right? A reality, and do you mind if I just kind of talk bluntly? Would that be all right? All right. At least 3 of you said yes. So if anyone's offended, it's Robert, Greg, and Jerome's fault. but here's the thing, like pressure, right? Sometimes I hear people say, "Oh man, this is tough," or "This is hard," or "I'm struggling with this, that, or the other thing," and you have to remember, as business owners, pressure is that's just the nature of the beast. It's part of what we do. Right. And so navigating the current market, navigating what's out there, that just is. And what I would say to you is the skill you need to get better and better at to handle those kinds of pressures is the skill of objectivity versus subjectivity. Right? Because it just is. The market is tough. Yes, it is. Do you choose to succeed anyway? Do you choose to push forward anyway? Do you choose to sell houses anyway? Right? Recently, I was in a call and somebody said, "Yeah, fear. I'm like struggling with fear." But here's the thing I understand. There's fear and then there's courage. And I can't remember who said it. I think it was Via Williams, right? Was some of you on the Via Williams call where she talked about fear and then the idea of courage, right? Fear is just one of those things that shows up, like welcome to being human. Courage is one of those things that we have more control over, because courage is feeling the fear and just doing it anyway. Right? Feel the fear and then just choose to succeed anyway, pass through the fear. What else? So did we answer the question of what are you doing to keep everybody pointed forward, staying positive, and ultimately winning business, right? Because one of the best ways to keep people positive is have them win. So what are you doing to create wins? Yeah, Shirley.
And so I have an unusual situation. I volunteered to take care of an estate hired me for an assisted living person to sell her house. And she's a dear friend of 40 years. And my problem is I'm immersed in friend stuff and, trying to get the house listed. And my question to you is, because I really want to get it listed while the market is great, right? It's an as-is house in Stratford. And I heard someone say something the other day about putting it just on the KW site, not listing it on the MLS. I was confused by that, because I know you can not put it on the MLS and have other people have an opportunity to, because it would be really helpful if I could put it on the market to just KW right now.
Yeah, so I guess my first question is, what's holding it back from going on the market whole hog?
The estate sale is happening, like the auction is happening this the weekend of the 13th where everything gets picked up. And then there's a tag sale happening the weekend after that for everything left over. And then there's clean out, pictures, the whole 9 yards after that.
Got it.
So I'm looking at like July 1st or July 7th, whatever Friday is that first week in July.
Yeah. So what I would say is, first and foremost, don't worry, because the market's not going anywhere. I don't believe that the market is going to slow down all that much between now and the summer. I don't think we're going to have our summer doldrums, maybe for a week or two in August, but I don't really think it's going anywhere. So even if it is July, it's not the end of the planet. Alternatively, you could certainly, if they signed listing paperwork and signed documentation to keep it off the MLS, you could certainly broadcast it via social media. You could broadcast it internally. You could do whatever you wanted to. The timing of that is they have to be off the market, off the MLS for at least 30 days, right? So the timing is probably perfect if you did that right now. And so this way you could maybe get people in there. You could start running ads on social media and creating more of a buzz, or just have people come. I mean, you have to figure out if you could show it or not, right? With all the stuff still there. And if you can, see what you can do. It may not be ultimately the best path for the seller, because market exposure is what drives the multiple offers and all those kinds of things. And yet,
and I just wanted to understand about doing it internally. I don't feel versed in that at all. And then the other question was, I think you're right. I think like being able to like farm the neighborhood and, have an open house and do all of that when it's on the MLS is probably more beneficial for me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I think it's beneficial for everybody involved, right? Including the property, because it just keeps promoting the fact that this property is available for sale to people who may know of people who want to buy it, right? Neighbors are an important part of the marketing, I think, or the exposure process. And let me make one comment about friends. I think you have to get really, really on purpose when you are in business with someone who's also a friend. And what I mean by that is you need to have a conversation up front that says, you know what, Sherry Lou, I so appreciate us going into business together. There's a couple of things that I want to be clear about. Number one, your personal relationship to me is far more important than the professional one that we are entering. And so if those two things ever start to be in conflict, I want you to know that I expect that you're going to let me know that as quickly as possible. And you have my promise that I also will come to you. And then we'll figure something else out. That being said, please note, there are times where I will absolutely be wearing my friend hat. And there will be times where I'm going to be wearing my, this is a business relationship hat. And if it's helpful, I know you guys are gonna think this is stupid, but I used to actually have two hats because I had a bunch of listings that were friends, and I wanted to make the point very clear. Like when I wore the blue hat, we can just have a conversation as friends. If you want to have a business conversation, like we're out to dinner and you want to talk about your listing, you know what? I don't have my red hat with me. Therefore, we're not going to be doing that now. Keep it as separate as you possibly can, or else you run into either having the personal relationship devolve into it's always business, or you can never get anything done on the business side because we're always talking about the kids or vacation or, where I bought my last pair of pants or shoes or, whatever. So I literally used to have two hats, and I would bring that to the listing consultation to say, okay, red hat is business, blue hat, friends. And for the next 60 days, while we're going through this process, I'm going to be really a stickler about separating those two things out. You know what? There's nobody that didn't appreciate that. Some of them thought I was a little whacked, right? Because I actually had two hats. And yet, the visual was very helpful for them. The visual made it make sense, right? I'm going to tell you, the visual for me allowed me to make that switch. Say, oh, you know what? We're going to talk about the weekend. Okay, hold on. Let's finish with the red hat. Are we done talking business? Anything else we need to discuss? No? Great. Boom. Now, before I leave, you want to talk about going out on the weekend? Let's put the blue hat on. Call me crazy. They did, but it worked. Why on earth are you talking about red and blue hats? My goodness. Go ahead, Greg.
I was gonna say, thanks for that reminder. Because actually, I got a text last night from a new coworker of mine, he's in a very good rental situation now, but is rathering to buy something a bit closer to work, and in like the multifamily condo route. And he's like, "Oh, is this the right time? Is it this? Is that?" So he's asking a bunch of questions, and I didn't have that full-on conversation with them yet about like keeping things like there's real estate agent Greg and coworker Greg.
Yep.
So I'll have that conversation with them as well. But that's a good reminder.
Yeah, and it's always powerful to make sure they understand that the reason you're differentiating between the two is because you care about them at a high level, right? Like I would never want any business conversation to get in the way of how we work together or our personal relationship or whatever, right? Frankly, my promise to friends was always that if we ever got to that spot, I would immediately step out. And by that time I was in business with Debbie, so I had someone as a backup that could step right in. But if I were a solo agent, I would have done the same thing. I would have called Greg and said, you know what, look, this is a friend of mine. It's getting too weird. And so I need you to kind of step on in and take this over. Here's how we'll work out the numbers.
Yeah, I actually just did that with a different client. It was kind of a long overdrawn process, and my availability wasn't as great, or they kind of regressed in their knowledge of the buying process. So it was like kind of mutual decision to bring in somebody else to kind of hand it off to, which I think is working out well.
Yeah, and it's so funny because remember that asking for help from your colleagues, there is nothing wrong with that, right? Nothing wrong with that. And we oftentimes don't do it because we're leading with ego, or it's a scarcity versus abundance conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of, well, I'm certain I could do it. I'm certain I can do it. I'll make this work. I'll make this work. Trust me, nobody understands that better than I do, right? And yet, from especially when you have a strong or dominant sense of ego about how you do what you do, it's as important to recognize the fact that there are times where you got to put that in your pocket and just say, you know what? What's in the best interest of the client, first and foremost, and ultimately, what's in the best interest of getting to a finish line, right? In Greg's case, it maybe just was an availability thing, right? In other cases, it may be because somebody asked you to list a property, halfway across the state that you just like, really, why am I listing in East Hartford, right? And so you make these decisions. It's okay to just kind of back off those decisions and say, hey, you know what? Let's do something different. That's ultimately in your best interest. So I love that you got there. I love that the change was made, and I love that that everyone's just okay with it, right? Like the plan didn't end. No one was hospitalized. There was no crying. There was no, beating of chests and things of that. Right? Right. Cool. That's good because I didn't know the answer to that, Greg. So if you said, well, actually, there was a lot of crying, but that would have screwed the whole conversation.
There was a bit of friction towards the end, just about things in general, but I think they were kind of hinting towards bringing in somebody else, and so I was like, that's fine by me.
Yeah, and you know what? Here's something to remember. Friction, in and of itself, that's just Wednesday, right? That's again the nature of our beast. It's not something that anyone's doing right or wrong. Friction is just normal. And so don't be freaked out by friction. Be freaked out if you sense friction and then choose not to do anything about it, right? That's where the trouble lies. So when there is friction and then you're open to it, maybe even bring it up. You know what? I can't help but notice that the last couple of times we've been out hasn't been as smiley and happy as the first couple of times. Just want to check in and see is everything okay? Is there something that I did or said that we need to talk about? I think the more you're willing and able to have simple, objective, open, clear communication with everyone on your planet, oh my goodness, life gets so much simpler and business gets simpler, right? Because you just step out of the drama. Anybody all for no drama? Man. Right, and so just talk. What else?
I had that relationship with my son and his future wife. It was an awful, messy thing. The future wife, daughter-in-law, wanted to get very not kind with the people we were negotiating with. And I just gave it all to Len. I said, Len, I co-did it with Len. It was the only way I could survive the relationship.
Yeah. Yeah. Call in help. Again, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yep.
Nothing wrong. So I was having a conversation with one of your colleagues the other day, and I asked a question that I didn't know the answer to, and I was surprised by the answer. And I want to pass it to you because it talks a little bit about, again, different pressures. And for as long as I've known Gary Keller, he's talked about the idea that if 75% or more of your business comes from your database, you're probably not leveraging your money well enough. And if 75% or more of your business comes from strangers, from people you don't know, from that marketing side, right, where you end up spending money, you're probably not leveraging your relationships well enough. And so it's that constant battle of where is my business coming from and where do I put some more pressure, right, to keep with the word of the day. And so I was having a conversation with one of your colleagues, and he said to me, my business last year was like 80% buyers. I said, well, okay, so let's talk about if it's 80% buyers, were they buyers from your database or strangers? He's like, most of them, like 50, 60, 65% of them were, it was very heavy strangers. I said, okay, well, so talk to me about that. Where's that coming from? And he said, well, I warning, I'm going to say the Z word. It's like, I buy Zillow leads. I said, okay. And he said, I know, I'm not supposed to do that. And I said, well, I'm not judging that decision. I'm simply asking some questions around it. Talk to me about what the results are. Do you know your numbers around that? Because one of the things I've learned is that people start to spend money and they have no idea what the return on that investment is. They got a couple of leads. Okay, well, were they valid leads? Did they close? What was the amount of money you earned from the leads that closed more than what you spent? Did you get a return, or are you losing money on that scenario? And he said, yeah, I know my numbers very specifically. And he brought them up, and I said, okay, well, so what was it? He said, well, I spent $6,000 last year on Zillow leads, which is $500 a month. I said, okay, and what did that turn into? What was the closing? And he said, after I paid KW, right? So the number is actually higher from a GCI perspective than what I'm going to give you. This is net to him. He spent $6,000. He closed net to him $87,000 in those leads. If you do the math, it's a 14.5%, 14.5 times return on the $6,000. Anybody think that's relatively okay? Yeah, me too, right? A 15 times return on $6,000. So what's interesting is he's now, just to kind of give you an idea of where he's chosen to put pressure, I'm telling you this for a reason. He's now, let's see, double, triple, quadruple, quintuple, sextuple. Is that 6 times? He's sextupling down on that source. And this year he'll spend $36,000, which he has found 2 partners to leverage some of that out to. So he's actually paying 18 and they're paying 18. So he's tripling down on his personal investment to see if he can't now triple or better the return. So I throw that out to you because I want you to start hearing what some of your colleagues are doing from the perspective of, maybe you say, you know what, I don't have $36,000 to buy leads. Okay, well, then don't do that. And yet, what business decisions are you making to create opportunities that can turn into money? Remember, you're business owners, which means at some point you're going to need to spend money to make money. That's not a cliche because it doesn't apply to almost every business owner. It's a cliche because it applies to every business owner. At some point, you need to spend money to make money. And so how are you proceeding? What investments are you making in your business? What pressure are you applying to yourself in terms of closings so that you can generate the income necessary to reinvest in your business to take it to the next level? Right? Yes, Jerome.
So to that point, right? Is there, I'm trying to figure out how to ask my questions. It's a little bit of a confusing one. There's sort of an old school way of doing things and a new school way of doing things. And everyone seems to end up in the hybrid way. But is there anybody that we know of or you know of that can kind of analyze what we're doing from a short-term perspective and say, okay, this seems to make sense, or this is heading in the right direction, to kind of analyze the spend on it?
So I guess my answer would be, I think with a couple of simple questions, I think you can do that. I think you can do it yourself for yourself. And maybe that's not what you're asking, but I'll finish my thought there and then tell me I'm off base. My thought is, if you're pedaling down a path, you've chosen a path to grow business. Well, for me, depending on most things, I give 90 days, right? If I know that this particular source is likely to take a little longer, maybe I'll give it 180 days. And I track what the spend is, and I track what the return is, and I track the amount of time, and I track all those things around that particular path I'm walking down. And then I analyze it 90 days later. So on day 91, I'll go back and say, okay, I just spent this much money and this much time. The thing I personally do is I convert my time into dollars, right? Do you know your dollars per hour? Do you know your worth in a dollars per hour perspective? I think it's important to understand that, right? So then I convert those hours into dollars and look at what my results are. And then I weigh the pros and cons. I personally like to see at least a 3 to 5 times return on things that I spend, depending on what it is. Sometimes I'll look for a 10 times return. There's very few things that I kind of find are worth pursuing long-term if they're only giving me a 1.5 or 2 times return. Because I know there are things out there that are better, and I'm keep searching to find those. Now, some of those things might be the thing that you just did for 90 days done for 365 days. That might increase the return, such as geographic farming, right? Geographic farming typically has a 12-month lead time before you're seeing anything from it, depending on how you're working it and what kind of either door knocking or call through you have as a follow-up to it. So there are certain things that might have a longer time to review. Is that what you're asking, or am I answering the wrong question?
You're answering the question. There's just a dynamic to it that's puzzling me, meaning I can figure some of the things out, and I have to remind myself every single day that I'm not 3 years into this, I'm 6 months into this, which is a very confusing thing in my brain.
Yeah.
But I have ventured down certain paths to invest in things to build out the brand and follow a lot of the guidance that I've been given. But it's very difficult for me to measure the return on investment at this moment, because even though I've made multiple offers, I haven't had any offers accepted, no matter, what we're doing. And the market is just absurd. I don't know how else to say it. I mean, 24-hour listings, and so I don't know if what I'm doing is right or wrong. I mean, but based on the science of it, it's right. I know, for example, I'm generating 50 to 60 leads in a day, and I have somebody following up on them, which turns into 3 to 4 appointments, which sounds awesome, but there's no rationale to saying that anybody's rational. And that's why I have no idea what I'm doing.
So I followed all of that right up until the rational piece, right at the very end. And so let me ask this: the 3 to 4 appointments that you're setting, what have been the results of those appointments? Are they buy side appointments or list side appointments?
They're buy side appointments.
Okay.
The sell side appointments are way too expensive and complicated and time consuming. At least that's what I found in my area. On the sell side appointments, they're somebody used a brilliant quote on multiple of your calls, the champagne taste and cat food budget. It's kind of at that point, or they're just refusing to qualify, from a pre-qualification standpoint. And then, and specific to the market, then I'm refusing to take them out without a pre-qualification letter because we have to submit an offer within an hour.
Yeah.
So, so maybe it was a year ago, it'd be worth it, but now I don't know if it's worth it. And do I even want these leads?
Yeah. So interesting question. And I'll tell you that if I can think of who I heard this from, I will repeat it to give credit where credit is due. I can't quite think of who it was at the moment. But someone said to me recently, one of the things that I'm doing is I'm being ultra careful about who I'm qualifying and what I'm qualifying them for, which I do not think is a bad path, right? If you're working with buyers who don't understand or don't want to understand the arena that they're entering, everyone's destined for loss and resentment and disappointment, right? So qualifying them at a higher level makes good sense to me. And at the same time, the people who qualify themselves out of participating in the market as it exists today, someone said to me yesterday or the day before, you know what, I'm just building a database. I'm building an army for tomorrow. I said, well, talk about that. He said, well, anybody who doesn't qualify out right now, based on what's going on right now, I'm just building a database and touching them and touching them and touching them and touching them and touching them, because there are a bunch of people right now who, if they don't qualify out right now based on the expectations that I set for them with the market the way it is, they'll be buyers in December or next spring or next summer, right? If and when things start to even out. And I thought that was kind of brilliant. It's the idea of, well, you need business tomorrow too, right? And so in your quest for today's business, are you building tomorrow's business with those people? And so your answer might lie in, yeah, you may be doing all the right things right now. There may be some conversion conversations we could have, right? I'd have to listen. You'd have to diagnose and or have someone diagnose whether or not the conversion conversations that you're having. Let me take a half step back. One of the things that I believe is that you have to be willing to always look in the mirror, right? So it shouldn't be a big surprise to most of you on this call today that when I say things like, okay, how are we going to diagnose where the issue is, that I always start with us. And that's not a judgment or a condemnation or anything about what we do or how we do it. I have just learned, not only in life but in business, that we don't have the power to control anyone else but us, right? You can't make buyers different. You can't. You can educate them. You can give them tools. But if they're paranoid and think that the market is a conspiracy against them, there's very little, or have no motivation, right? There's very little that you can do to help motivate someone forward. So you've now made this connection. And so then the question is, all right, what can I do to keep that relationship, even if it's on the back burner for now? How can I show up for them to make sure that when they are ready to do business, they are ready to do business with me? So it's building a better and longer incubation system, in my opinion, and being willing to show up and recognize, oh, everyone just shifted. Oh, it was Alice's fault because she put her blue hand up. I see. So everyone blame Alice. Everyone just Hollywood Squares. And I'm like, wow. So I don't know if I'm barking up the wrong tree, Jerome, or if I'm being helpful at all, but I think the answer is you're likely doing lots of the right things. There may be opportunities for you to improve from a conversion perspective. So now it's a conversation around, all right, well, what am I doing to convert? What tools am I using? What scripts am I using? What's my speed to the lead? If I'm generating these leads, am I getting to them? What did Via Williams tell us? Right? Speed to the lead nowadays is within, anybody remember? It's 120 seconds. So that's 2 minutes. And frankly, I think 2 minutes is probably a little long, right? So are there things that we can improve, knowing that we don't have control over people and we don't have control over the market? And the other side of that is, even if we're struggling, homes sell every single day, right? And so that, to me, when I look at that and say, okay, so somebody figured it out. And it wasn't me, because I didn't sell a home yesterday. So now I'm irritated, right? And so now that pressure for me comes back on me to say, okay, what did these 9 people in this town do to sell those homes yesterday that I'm not doing? And so I'm going to look internally and say, how am I tinkering? What could I do differently? Do I need a different conversion script? Am I asking for the business at least 5 to 7 times? Am I doing the things that we know lead to the conversion process that has them say yes, that gets me the actual appointment? Right? And maybe the answer is yes, maybe the answer is no. Again, I'm kind of just brainstorming out loud.
Yeah.
To say, if you're generating leads, you're generating leads, that's the positive, right? So the diagnosis isn't, okay, where do we have to generate more leads from? Because you're doing that. Now you have to figure out, okay, I'm generating leads and I'm struggling getting them from here, either into the car or onto the market or to the closing table, right? So to me, it's always figuring out what step you're getting stuck on.
I'm saying, and I'm stuck on 2 steps. I'm stuck on getting offers accepted, and I'm stuck on getting people to understand the market, where it's not walk on the lot, pick the car, then sit down with finance. It's talk to your finance, and then talk to me, and then we'll go pick the car. Yep. So there's just changes to the process that people don't know. And when I explain it to them, they don't necessarily believe me, because yes, they like the fact they're talking to a guy in Connecticut who knows the market and they want to come see houses, but they don't want to be ready to sign anything, and they don't want that pressure. And I want to hear what Alice has to say, because I see the shifting and nodding and I don't want her to forget, but that's where I'm at, Rick. And that's what I'm trying to figure out. And that's why I think what you said was good. I think it was the affirmation of, yes, maybe next year it'll be brilliant, but I just remind you again, I've been doing this for 6 months. I need something now.
Yeah, I get it. And now is out there. We'll cycle back to that. Go ahead, Alice.
I just want to say I'm working with 2 lovely young women who are in the sweet spot of the market trying to buy something. And my problem is, and has been, trying to keep them focused on looking at houses, because they look at them and they say, oh, this is going to go in a heartbeat. We don't have a chance. We don't want to get in a bidding war. So I've been trying, my dilemma has been trying just to keep them focused on, let's go look, you never know. And I think now that I've gotten them to circle back again and a little bit more interested, because we had a couple of weeks where we didn't go out at all, even though there were things out there. It's just that I think a lot of the buyers today are so afraid to like something enough that they make an offer that they're going to lose. So they're afraid of liking and losing. So I think that's the dilemma a lot of us are facing, especially, like I said, in the sweet spot of the market, especially like here in Stamford, which is like up to 650.
Yeah.
But I got them back again. So, we were going out on weekends, and all of a sudden I didn't hear from them. So I said, what's going on? And they said, well, we're busy on weekends. So now I've corralled them to go out during the week. So it's just kind of massaging your relationship with these buyers so that they feel comfortable and not afraid, and realize that they may lose a house or 2, and they don't have to go over the asking price if they don't want to. Make an offer and see where it goes. You never know. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, and I agree with a lot of that, and I agree with a small piece of it. I disagree with a small piece of it. And the part I disagree with is I'm not sure we're doing buyers a service by encouraging them to not step up to the plate. I struggle with that a little bit. And what I mean by that is if someone said to me today, I don't want to have to be in a bidding war, I think I would stop in my tracks and say, okay, let's sit down and talk about that. Talk to me about what is the concern about being in a bidding war, right? What's driving that concern? Well, we don't want to have to, overpay for a property. Okay, can you define overpay? Tell me what that looks like, overpay. Well, it sounds like, a lot of people are paying over the asking price. Well, and so that is true. And we can statistically show you that is what's happening, especially in the sweet spot of the market. And so talk to me about the connection in your mind between paying over the asking price and overpaying. How are those two things connected?
Well, their problem was not being afraid of overpaying at all. Their thing was they have a budget and they can't go past it. So what I did was I lowered our search.
That's right.
So that they'd have more opportunities at a lesser price and therefore have more opportunity to go up to their budget if they had to.
Yeah. And see, that's brilliant. See, that's looking at the marketplace, looking at the buyer and saying, okay, what can we do, right? Instead of getting stuck in we can't buy, we can't find anything, we can't, what can we do? Well, if that $50,000 keeps us on the losing side, well, what if we move to a different arena where now that $50,000 keeps us on the winning side, right? Because now if you're in the 550 range plus 50 and you're willing to pay 600 or 605, that's a whole lot different than if you're in the 600 range and you can pay the same 600 when those people are paying 650, right? So I love that adjustment, right? And as long as those buyers then understand that you're seeing a different house at 550 than you are at 600, right? And I recognize that may be exciting, it may be disappointing, and either is okay. Are you willing to now review things $50,000 less so that when you show up, you are the winner? And the other question I would ask is, are you willing to spend 600 on the 550 house? Because the market today is going to require that of you in order to win. Right? We've got to kind of hit people between the eyes and love on them at the exact same time. Yes, sir.
Just to follow up to what you said, right? How do you get somebody on the listing side to engage in a bidding war rather than just best and final and silence? Because that's where I keep losing, is that I have clients that are willing to keep going, but we submit a best and final in the assumption that we're already 20,000 over market. And then there's no feedback except no, where the feedback I get is that the other, the offer that was selected was $500 less than your offer, but they were putting 2/3 down instead of 1/3. So I don't even know what rebuttals to use. There's no scripts that I've seen for this stuff, or how to get anybody to entertain a negotiation.
Yeah, well, and you've kind of hit the biggest challenge of working with buyers right on the nail right on the head right now, because so many times there isn't any additional conversation, right? And there are a couple of paths I would go down. Robert put in the chat, I saw escalation clause, right? So there is that. Although I will say that more and more, I'm hearing from more and more agents that sellers are not really interested in the escalation clause. I think we might have burned out the escalation clause in the last 6 to 9 months, right? Because sellers they're struggling because every offer that comes in, they're getting 10 offers and each one of them is escalating off of something else, right? At some point you're like, where do I go? Now, if I were a listing agent, I would not be advising the seller to beg off escalation clauses, right? So not so fast, Robert, never mind it just yet, because I think it's a really good point. And I also believe it's a really good tool. However, it doesn't work all the time. And the reason I say it's a really good tool is if in fact your buyers are willing to put their best foot forward, right? Which really has everything to do with the conversation. Okay, look, so we have this 550 house. What are you willing to spend? Well, I'm willing to spend 575. Okay, let me ask this. If in fact, this 550 house that you're willing to spend 575 comes back and says, we're countering everyone at 625, what would you do? I would get an answer to that question before I moved forward with my 575 offer. Because if the answer was, look, 575 is all I'm willing to pay for this house, okay, great, let's move forward with it. If the answer to, if they came back and countered at 625 on their 550 house, if the answer to the buyer's question is, well, then I would kind of take the reserves and throw them and do like 601. That's where I would end up. Great. Then why are we not writing this offer up for 601 right out of the gate? You've got to help people understand that they only have one shot at this. The other thing I think you have to do is, again, we've talked about this almost ad nauseum at this point in different classes and sessions, is strip the offer down as much as you possibly can in terms of contingencies. And so once you have the rawest form of the offer with the biggest, best number that you can, because $500 less with a financing flip-flop of how much down is a whole lot different than you were actually $25,000 higher, not $500 higher. At $25,000 higher, nobody cares about the financing anymore, right? That idea of we didn't lose because of money because we were $500 higher, but they went with better, with altered financing or better financing, whatever. At some point, money speaks louder than that to most people. I mean, I'm speaking generically, right? None of this works 100% of the time. So if the offer was now $10,000 higher, well, then all of a sudden, my guess is you wouldn't have heard, well, but they're putting more down. And so that leads us to another strategy. Are you working with your buyers to find, okay, how much cash do you have? Let's put as much of that down as we possibly can, because it makes you stronger. It makes you look like you're willing to risk more, which means to the seller that you are more likely to stay in place and not wake up tomorrow morning with buyer's remorse, or not 3 days from now use your 5-day attorney review period to walk away, right? And so that then when we go to more down, now we're talking about, okay, of that amount of money that you're putting down, how much of it is non-refundable? Are you applying pressure on the seller to make your buyers their choice? The sellers have to feel enough pressure that if they don't say no, if they say no to you, they're leaving things on the table. And my guess is, for those of us who keep losing opportunities, we haven't done, the buyers, right? The buyers haven't done enough to put pressure on the sellers to worry about losing that offer. Because at some point, the sellers will say, okay, you know what, hands down, we got to go with that person. And the struggle is that what that looks like is different every single time. That's the hard part, right? Is that just because you won it yesterday using this scenario doesn't mean it's the same today or this weekend, right? It's looking at the whole scenario all over again, because the buyers are different, the sellers are different, and the scenario is different. I don't know. I think a lot of you are listening to me thinking, yeah, I'm doing all those things, Rick. I get it. I'm doing all those things and I'm still losing. And that may be right. The question I would have is there any part of it that you and or the buyers are not doing? And if so, could you add that in? And at some point, recognize that you may have to take a couple of swings with some strikes before you hit the home run. Whew. I don't know. Thoughts, comments, concerns? Am I full of it?
It's a dynamic, confusing game. There's, it's, the rules are changing as we play.
Yes, that is true. That is true. It's true and it's not true. And here's why I say that, Jerome, because I think the challenge is to recognize that fundamentally the rules are not changing. Did you ever play Monopoly at somebody else's house? Right? Because everybody has house rules when they play at Monopoly. Right? We had a game here in the Richfield Market Center about 2 years ago. I think Tama was there, right? And oh my goodness, like I showed up to play Monopoly the way I understand how Monopoly is to be played. And we started to work on these rules. I'm like, whose rules are these? Like we were playing with somebody else's house rules. So the basic idea of how to play Monopoly foundationally is the same. And I would argue that right now, the basic rules about how to play this game are foundationally the same. However, with each buyer and seller combination that we're looking to put together, everybody's kind of working inside of their own house rules, because you have a buyer's agent and a listing agent, and you have a buyer and a seller. Now you've got 4 different opinions about how all this should go. And sometimes the house rules play to your favor, and sometimes they're just annoying, right? Like we always play that all the money that gets collected from the cards and everything goes in the middle, so that when you land on free parking, there's a jackpot in the middle. We got to play where there was just 1/500 in the middle. I'm like, whose rules are those? Those are dumb rules. But they weren't dumb rules. They were just not the rules that I'm used to, right? And the reason I make the differentiation is because what I want to make sure that when you leave this call, we don't leave with a mindset of there's just no way to win because it's an impossible thing. Everything's changing so quickly, right? Because that is not true. There is a way to win, and you have to continue to keep pushing towards finding that path to win, and trying everything you can possibly try, and having really objective expectation setting conversations with buyers so that you're vetting them and they understand exactly what it takes to win, so that when you come back to them in a certain scenario and say, okay, if that house is the one that you think you really want to buy, here's what statistically the data says, right? In this price range, people are paying minimally 5, maximally 10% over the asking price. Here's what that calculates out to mathematically. I'm curious, here's 5, here's 10. Where do you want to fall? What are you willing to waive? How much are you willing to play by those house rules to win? And remember, at the end of the day, your job is defined as interpreting current conditions such that the client can make the best decision possible. And some of us struggle with having those objective, kind of firm, sorry if this is disappointing, but it's just the facts, Jack, conversations, because we think that we're there to solve the problem. We're not there to solve problems. We're not there to rescue the day. We're not there to do any of those things. We're there to help people interpret facts so that they can make great decisions to win. And sometimes they interpret the facts and they decide that they don't want to win that game. That's okay too, right? That's where you're starting to build that army of buyers for later. Jacqueline, bring us home.
Rick, so this is on the listing side. I had a question in the chat, but maybe you didn't have a chance to look at it. I just have this question where I have a potential seller who's in the hospital. He just had a heart surgery. So how do I approach it in such a way that like I'm not putting any pressure on him to put it on the market, but I just want him to know that, there could be changes in the market soon, but I don't want to put any pressure on him. He just had a heart surgery. So
Yeah, I would agree. That's one of the very few scenarios where even I look to back down a little bit, right? So I would agree that, pressure kind of put him into the hospital. Let's not exert it on him until he's recovered and out. And at the same time, I think I'll answer that two ways. Number one, I don't think unless he's going to be in the hospital for the next 6 to 12 months, I don't think he has anything to worry about, because I don't think that the market is changing anytime soon. I think we're going to see interest rates continue to stay low. I think we're going to continue to see pressure on buyers because of a lack of inventory. I don't see much of that changing. Are things changing a little bit now? Sure, but they're only going from like chaotically insane to mildly insane, right? That's kind of the change in the market that we're seeing. We're still squarely in the insane pocket. And so what I would do proactively is I would just send him market updates. I would send him market updates from the perspective of, hey, just wanted to check in with you. I know how boring it can be in the hospital. Here's a bunch of stuff to review if you have some time on your hands. Hey, just wanted to keep you updated on what was happening in whatever city his property's in. Let me know if you have any questions. I would interject, hey, calling to see how you are. Is there anything I can do for you personally? With here's some market stats, here's some info, and just stay in touch so that when he's home, then you can give him a call to say, so glad you're home, and maybe give it a week or two after he's home, and then give him a shout to say, now that you're home, wondering about what we talked about before you went into the hospital in terms of the house. But I think I would absolutely take a half a step back until he's home. And just be supportive and maybe give him some interesting things to read to kill the boredom.
Okay, thank you.
You're quite welcome. All right, guys, we are out of time. So I hope this was helpful and answered some questions. As always, I appreciate spending time with you and look forward to our next one. Have a great afternoon, and we'll see you tomorrow at 9 a.m.
Hey, Rick, real quick.
Yeah.
I sent you a text on Friday, and I don't know if you got it. I have a situation I need to discuss with you at some point.
I don't. Hold on a second, Greg. Let me just stop the recording. Hold on.